Chapter 8: The Wings of Fortune. Captain Artemis leaned forward against the railings on the upper deck of his ship, watching the men below preparing to go ashore. This would be his third attempt to explore the Virginia coastline, since the second trip he had made, nearly 3 years ago, provided him with more than enough of a taste of just how grisly the spring weather could be in this part of the world, that he decided to forego any further attempts at landfall, until such a time as the weather conditions were more suitable. What a difference 3 years can make. Today the weather was impeccable. With a brisk southwestern breeze blowing and crystal clear blue skies above, Artemis was ready for great things to happen. The third time's a charm, so the saying goes, and he was counting on it. Henry Kane Artemis Jr. had been a sailor all of his life and knew little else, save for the mysteries and complexities of the sea and the profits that it could provide. There were many who claimed that Artemis was such a part of the sea that he must have been raised on dolphin's milk. Be it fact or fancy, he only truly felt at peace when his legs were standing solidly on the deck of a ship, and that same ship was running at full sail with the winds behind her. He glanced up into the rigging above, which had been properly tended to by those same men who were now working the boats below, readying them to go ashore. His ship, the Wings of Fortune, so aptly named by his father, Henry Artemis Sr., who had laid her keel over 40 years ago. At the seasoned age of 39, most of those who didn't know Artemis would begin telling him that it was now time for him to discontinue taking such a risky venture as this. They would say it was time to cash in his earnings and settle down, find a wife, and raise a family. But he could never dream of giving up this life now, since he'd put so much of his sweat and blood into it. Artemis had other plans, at least for the moment. Artemis was descended from a long line of seafaring men. His grandfather, Robert William Artemis, had been the captain of a guided missile frigate in the service of the British Royal Navy during the time of the Cataclysm. His father would tell stories of how grandfather had protected vital food relief shipments along the South African coast from pirates in the days and weeks immediately following Anna, that is until the fuel and food for their own ships finally ran out, and then the only vessels that could operate were ships of the wind. His father would tell of the dark days, as they traveled with small groups of men and raided and stole any ship that they could find with sails, trading medicines, guns, and everything else they could, in order to stay alive and survive. His father, Henry Artemis Sr., took over as captain of the Valdago, a four-masted schooner, after his grandfather Robert was killed during a raider attack along the coast of Somalia. It was on the Valdago where young Henry Jr. was born, and there is where he was raised as a child. Henry made a vow to himself, soon after his father died leaving him in charge, that he would spend his life at sea making as much money as he could, then buy the biggest castle on some remote land, never to set foot on a ship again before he would ever settle down with a wife and children. From his vantage point, he could see his first officer, Mr. Deeks, and the ship's doctor, Mr. Valdez, arguing over the size of the cages and the sanitary conditions to be had in the open holds below deck. Cages that were, for the time being, unoccupied. But that situation, Artemis hoped, would soon change. Artemis was determined that they were not going to leave here with at least something to show the investors for all their trouble. Although unified in their pursuit of profit, they differed in the object of their fortunes. While the investors were simply requiring Artemis and his crew to fill their holds with indentured laborers brought on to assist in the rebuilding of Europe and Central American ports, Artemis sought a different sort of fortune. He was after guns, gold, or anything else that could be quickly sold to line his pockets, and to Artemis, the eastern coast of North America was an untapped gold mine of wealth and prosperity. He could hear the heavy steps approaching from behind of his quartermaster, Lieutenant Heinrich. "Captain, all shore groups are away, and the holds are ready to receive cargo," barked Heinrich, pausing for a response. "Very good, Mr. Heinrich. Also, you must be sure to remind our ship's boatswain, Mr. Dominguez, that we only have 1 week in order to explore this area, collect what we can find and move on. We cannot spare 1 single day more," ordered Artemis. "Yes, sir," answered Heinrich, turning quickly to leave. "Hold on a moment, Mr. Heinrich," barked Artemis. "I almost forgot. Mr. Deeks wants me to remind you to take a separate group out to gather water and hunt for necessary foodstuffs to resupply our pantries, understood? Yes, sir, I will assign that duty to Mr. Rawson, continued Heinrich, waiting to verify the captain's approval. Very well, he replied, as Heinrich turned and left. No sooner did Heinrich's footsteps fade, as he heard another familiar set of footsteps approaching from behind. Well, I see you got up early this morning, Henry, spoke the rough voice of Sergio Rolando, his newly assigned business partner and overseer. A man who knew nothing at all about the complexities involved in running a ship, but everything it seemed about making money and being an expert pain in the ass. Rolando, who was about the same age as Artemis, was short and somewhat pudgy, some would even say fat, no doubt from always managing to eat well on every occasion. Serge, I would like to say it's a pleasure to see you, but you know that, teased Artemis, mockingly. Cutting him off abruptly, yes, I know how you feel. But please, Henry, don't think of me as the enemy, think of me as your conscience reminding you of your duty. Not only to this ship and her crew captain, but to our investors, chided Rolando. Looking around at the unfamiliar shoreline, did I hear you correctly? We are to anchor here in this dreadful place for, what was it you said, a whole week, he asked indignantly. Your ears do you service, you are correct. We need to top off and replenish our water and food supplies, and there seems to be an abundance of both necessities here in this lovely little cove. Currently, my men are preparing their teams to go out and hunt, explore, and reconnoiter the area. Do you honestly believe you're going to find anything of value out here, Captain? Asked Rolando, pausing to look around again at the shoreline. Besides, do you even know where here is, Captain? You surprise me, Serge. For such a seemingly intelligent man, you seem to be ignorant of basic world geography and history. Rolando breathed out a huge, angry sigh. Artemis, if you weren't one of the best captains, why I would. Oh, don't take yourself so seriously, Serge. We are headed straight up the Potomac River, the very river that runs north into the old American capital city just north of U.S. Okay, and enlighten me, Captain, of what significance is that, since everything in this area was destroyed by the tidal wave following Anna? Now it was Artemis' turn to sigh. Let me show you what I'm talking about in my map room. Follow me, insisted Artemis, motioning for Rolando to follow him. As they turned and left, Artemis took one last look at the shoreline. Oh, how I wish I could follow those men right now, he thought. Artemis and Rolando entered the map room, where a large table was set up to one side with drawings, charts, and compasses lying all over. Looks like you've been pulling an all-nighter in here, Rolando joked. Artemis pulled in close to the table, shoving aside and onto the floor several large maps that had been in his way. He found the chart he was looking for and flattened it out carefully with both hands on the table, shoving his index finger into the middle of the map. Right here, and here, he pointed to 3 different places on the chart. We'll start with this area first, then move up north to search the others. If any of them look favorable, we come back next spring with more ships and more men. Rolando gazed at the chart, unimpressed. These maps are over 100 years old, Captain. What makes you think you're going to be able to find them now? And even if you do find them, who says there's anything worth all this trouble to go after, especially after so many years have gone by? Asked Rolando. It's a wild goose chase you're on, I say, and it's going to be your goose that is going to get cooked if you're wrong, scolded Rolando, turning on his heels to return to his quarters. Artemis stood there with the map in front of him, contemplating horrendous actions. There are times in one's life when you just want to reach out and strangle some people. Right now, if Artemis had been carrying a pistol, he might have been easily tempted to draw it out and put a bullet between Serge's eyes and be done with it. It would be merciful, he thought. Oh, you just wait and see, you fat little weasel, mumbled Artemis quietly to himself, still holding his finger on the last position on the chart. If I am right, and when I'm done, I'll have enough gold in my pockets to build a whole fleet of fortunes, mumbled Artemis, his eyes focused onto a city on the map where his finger now rested, Washington, D.C.
You have been listening to Caleb Elgin, The Rise of the Clans by David E. Farmer. also available on Amazon Kindle. More chapters coming soon. Thank you for listening. Have a great day. Bye-bye.